Okay, this is like our fourth talk, our fourth talk about design patterns. But in this talk, it's not specifically about a certain design pattern, but more a general talk about the limits and the scope of design patterns, when to use it, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of using the design patterns. Today, it's not one person who presents a design pattern, but it's going to be more like a group discussion. Uh, yeah, and well, the title is Limit and Scope of Design Patterns. So, what do you see? What are the advantages and disadvantages of design patterns? When should we use it? I think I will start. I think design patterns can be very dangerous to use.
Mm-hmm.
It leads people to not think critically about or not think for themselves, but just take a design pattern and then apply it mindlessly. What do you think?
Well, that's actually a very good aspect. I didn't think about this in this way. I think usually when I think of design patterns, I have like the handful I learned during university, and usually you find one fitting good. And I think like, oh, this is a good match, and then you just do it, and usually it works. But there might be sometimes a very fast conclusion you took there, and maybe there might be better solutions to it than just say, taking another MVC or something else. That's actually interesting. I didn't think about it. Yeah. So I anyway think that patterns are not per se good or bad. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, patterns for me are always used for when you know that a code can scale up exponentially, and you need to be able to maintain it and make it a little bit more understanding to someone who's coming new or something like this. Also, patterns for me sometimes have a more efficient way of looking into or applying a solution to a problem, other than trying to come up with my own solution to this, which is not followed by guidelines that were somehow created for more comfort and more efficiency. The point that Tan said, well, it kind of
Mr. T.
Yeah, Mr. T.
Very good.
It's quite a problem, because usually, especially junior developers who are not very used to patterns, they take whatever their boss says, and okay, you have to do it this way, but they don't have really the knowledge to know what was behind it, and it kind of limits their scope in thinking about development.
I think that's really interesting, because it's easy to you can witness this often in different companies, that people are just so focused on fixing the problem that they take the first appealing pattern and implement it, and they might not have thought deep about it.
Yeah, one of the main thing about design patterns, it gives a baseline for any project work. For example, we have 4 or 5 developers from different background, and suppose we start by choosing a MVC pattern. So we have one direction of thinking, which gives a base to the architecture of project. That is one of the main advantage of design patterns. And disadvantage could be we start fitting our ideas in that architecture. There is a possibility that it won't work there, but we start fitting our logic there. There, the disadvantage is there.
So what you're saying is design patterns are good communication tools for discussing with other developers if you have a collaborative project.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a very good thing when we start a project. Like we are starting from the scratch, so we have one pattern which we will use to make an architecture. But as we progress in the project, we should start thinking that there could be a different design pattern, so that we are not narrowed by single one design pattern. But design pattern is really good when we are starting up something.
This goes a little bit into the direction of refactoring also. That at some point you might realize that your project, especially with Agile and Scrum, your project developed into another direction, and then also the design patterns you used to implement that have been working so far might seem outdated or not that fitting anymore. So they might be replaced by custom code or maybe by a completely different design. And yeah, I mean, design pattern this way can also mean different things. It can mean like the overall design. We're talking now about our overall structure is in MVC, but there are also smaller design patterns that can be used. So yeah, and you need to keep the eyes open on both pages, I think.
I want to go back to what you said. What do you mean exactly? What design patterns are good for the start? Does it mean that later we don't want to have any design patterns anymore, or?
I mean to say that it gives a common ground
Yeah,
for developers
but
to start a project.
yeah, but this also applies for later for the continuation of this project, right? If a project is mature, then why not continue with design patterns?
Yeah, but we should, as he said, that it should be ideal to keep our eyes open with other design patterns. Like we are going through some enhancement, or your application is changing, then we should also think about other design patterns when the application is maturing.
Yeah.
And then, what do you think? Do you think design patterns are only something for project with multiple people, or can I also use, or is it recommended to use design patterns for a project where only one person or only two person work?
I would say it's absolutely recommended to also use such patterns. Not for the reason that to use pattern, and this is a famous thing, but for the fact that like you introducing someone else to your code, half a year later and you didn't touch your code, you're introducing yourself back to it. And if it's something you're familiar with because you have learned it already, then your learning curve again will be smaller. So it's definitely something also for one-man projects. Think about all the small libraries and programs you find in some Git repositories. They hopefully or probably anyway, even if they're just one person working on it, implemented in some sort of easy to understand architecture, and just for many reasons, for themselves to keep maintainable. Maybe someone else wants to branch out and takes the library to a new level. Definitely easier than if some standards are kept.
For example, many public projects which are open for everyone, if a design pattern is there, the advantage is anyone can come in and see the project, understand it, and start working with that. So.
Okay, maybe dive in a little bit into this. How do you communicate that? Okay, currently I'm using this pattern. I mean, when you go into a project, you usually see a huge file of files and of folders. How do you know this is MVP, or what the heck design patterns exist?
I think in every project there are certain rules to follow when we start doing a project, like naming conventions are there. For example, suppose it is MVVM pattern, so every view is like a bank view or account view, so you can understand that okay, these are views. Then there are models, so you can see that bank model or customer model is there. Yeah, and if view model is there, then the naming convention is like account details view model.
But this requires a little bit knowledge before. What would you recommend for beginners? I mean, for beginner, design patterns sound maybe a little bit exciting. I think a lot of people think as a magical spell that you just apply and then everything works fine. I mean, how... In the beginning, people are really excited about it and want to use it. What would you recommend a beginner when he or she uses design patterns?
Well, I would say get your hands dirty. Like, try it out and find it out. And it all looks super easy and super nice, and every design pattern looks like the best possible when you start from the ground. But the longer you use it and when your projects grow, then you will find out problems with it. Where you're like, oh, this is, I don't know how to solve this now, because this design pattern, as awesome as it was in the beginning, it's a little bit, it makes this specific part now a bit more complicated than I wished it to. and there is no real quick learning. I mean, design patterns are awesome because they are quick to learn, but the deep learning goes through your fingers, I think, and that's just sadly the way, or happily the way, however you take it. Everybody needs to go through themselves, learning it the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, my experience is whenever I got the tool, then, well, let's say I've got the hammer, then suddenly every problem becomes a nail, and I would apply it even though it doesn't make no sense whatsoever.
That's totally normal. I would say that's the way.
And to overcome this, you say it's you can overcome this only by practice.
Yeah, and maybe also discussions like this, where you
share your thought. Like maybe people had like for example like a factory or adapter pattern, and someone wants to try it in a different way. So you can, it's very good, I think, so that developers stay together and discuss different problems while applying the same pattern. I think this is what you would explain as getting your hands dirty and like sharing what you had found and all that stuff.
Yeah. And possibly also, letting your code get reviewed by someone who looks at it, who's not judging. I think this is a very important part of reviewing, be non-judging, because we all had to get our hands dirty and we all looked ridiculous doing it. So getting it reviewed and discussing it like in a professional environment like we're doing here. I think this could be.
Okay, this is for the beginner, but what about the experts or more seasoned developers? Because I've noticed some seasoned professionals take it like too seriously and they over-engineer their stuff by using design patterns. How do you know when to stop?
That's a very good question. How do you know when to stop?
I don't think I ever reached that point.
That's I guess sometimes you might be just believe believe yourself too much. I think sometimes you might just be believing that your grass is greener, and I think then sometimes it's just good to have a good review and try to be very unegoistic and deal with the criticism you get if you're doing it too far. I think if you cannot see it yourself, definitely you need it from the outside, the painful pill, and otherwise I would say the other way probably to make this better is, as we just said, learn a new pattern and become a fan of that, so you understand that you don't understand anymore how you could use the old pattern all the time, and you do the same thing with the new one, and so on and so on, and at some point I think you work your path through a deeper understanding. But then again, that's just making your hands dirty.
But still, it is very tough to say that when to stop.
Yeah.
I would say like when a pattern, like for example, when a pattern or two are causing more problems than solving. This is when you overdid it.
But it also takes guts to admit it that you work yourself in a corner.
When a code is understood by a newcomer in a team easily, then I think this pattern is working. Yeah, like for example, I'm new in team and I can understand a code in next 2 weeks and I can add my enhancement in it. It means that the code is maintainable, readable, and it's well documented also. So that is the point when you can say that code is good, the patterns we are using is correct.
Yeah, but the strange thing is, what happens if you notice the code is not good? And then it's usually too late to change.
Then it might be a bit late, and then you should try to find some time to refactor it and try to make it better.
At that point, major enhancement comes into the picture. For example, in my last project, the complete project was in MATLAB. Because there was too much data, financial data was there, and they were comfortable using MATLAB. Then the requirement came to them that the UI should be good, like chart. The data which is available in a database should be shown as a chart or pie chart. Then they realized that MATLAB is not good enough for that project, for displaying it in UI. So they switched the complete project to the WPF and MVVM framework. So a time comes in a project life cycle when you understand that we need to shift our project from one environment to the different technology.
It's an interesting metaphor I heard I heard some days ago in slightly different context was you might be thinking you might be developing a skateboard, and the skateboard is all you want, and the skateboard brings you a lot. But at some point you might realize that you want actually maybe a bike, and then you should not try to form your skateboard into a bike by adding
So true.
2 big wheels and and a chair, but instead you should reconsider like maybe I should remove this part and this part and this part so I can make a bike out of it actually. Yeah, and that was
Yeah, I think it's a good last word. I think before using design patterns, you have to understand the problem. And if you have applied already a design pattern, you should also have, like you said, have the guts to remove certain parts and to add stuff in and not mindlessly build on stuff that's it's not should be applied to the problem anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a good ending point. I will summarize what we got. So on the negative part, we've got mindless usage of design patterns. This and like what I said, with some noobs will use design patterns as a magical spell. That's there's over solution or anything. And second negative about design patterns are over engineering. So this happens to new beginners, but also to seasoned engineers. And I think you can overcome this only with more experience and also with the guts and with honesty to yourself, that to admit yourself that this design pattern doesn't work anymore.
And learning new design pattern, as you said.
And learning new
So
design
that you
patterns.
can forget the old one.
yeah.
Find better ones, exactly. And on the positive side, I've got, if you know more, then just feel free to add. Baseline for collaboration of large projects, and also as a communication tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
And it gives structure.
Yeah, it's a very good
structure
point.
to the project.
Yeah, and also I would say it gives proven solutions for problems that existed
Commonly
before.
exist.
That existed before. Yeah.
Yeah, but before you apply this solution, you
Need to
again,
think.
think and understand the problem first before apply the proven solution, because maybe that is a proven solution, but not to the problem that at hand.
Probably advice that applies for so many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think first, then act.
Yeah. So I think we can say that design patterns are useful, but we have to know when to use them. Okay. Think first.
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
That's a great ending. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's all think first.
Okay. If you've got comments or questions, just add them into our comment below. Thank you.